I'm really delighted to be introducing Corey Stockwell and Brad Portnovitz. Corey is beaming in from Minnesota. I thought it was very interesting that Sylvie and Nancy had, of course, they were talking about gestuality because that's what the collection is titled, but you were also talking about breath. And Corey, Mon cher amour, which is the book we will be referring to, it's Mon cher amour, love letters, or just letters?
Love letters.
Love letters of Albert Camus and Maria Casares, or Casares, as we say in Spanish. The Corey and Sandra Smith co-translated this 1,200-page volume of letters over 15 years. That's a lot of letters. And you'll be able to hear them speak on Friday when we publish the online festival. They will be giving a translator's perspective, or two translators' perspective, on bringing this 15-year correspondence into English. Camus, of course, was the moral conscience of post-war France, who brought the id of colonialism to the fore, and Maria Casares, daughter of exiles from the Spanish Civil War, was the star of film and theater and a muse to the same generation. Corey Stockwell is a PhD in comparative literature from the University of Minnesota. He has translated over a dozen books from French and many poems and essays from French and Spanish. Perhaps, Corey, you'll tell us the titles of a few of the books because they didn't appear online where I looked for your bio. His translation of Brigitte Giraud's concours-winning novel Live Fast was published last year by Echo. And I'm very interested to see that he has an important article on the poetics of breath, having just heard a conversation on the poetics of gesture, which also included a poem on breath. I think this will offer some insight into his thinking about translation. Todd Portnovitz is the editor of Mon cher amour and a translator in his own right, in his case from Italian. His prose translations include romance stories by Jhumpa Lahiri, translated with the author, co-translated this. In Search of Amrit Kaur by Lydia Manera Samburi, for Strauss Giroux and others. His poetry translations include Midnight in Spoleto by Paolo Valesio and Go Tell It to the Emperor, the selected poems of Pierluigi Capello. And he has a forthcoming book, Methods by Lorenzo Carluccio. He's been a fellow at the American Academy in Rome and received honors from the Academy of American Poets and the Red Loaf Translators Conference, and has come up once or twice in the course of the evening. He is also co-director of the Brooklyn-based reading series for writer translators, Ascendent. Senior editor at Knopf. He is a co-founder of the Italian poetry blog Formavera. I was particularly excited, though, having seen the translator's perspective, to have the editor's perspective. What makes a book of correspondence that was written in the 40s and 50s compelling for today's audience, a 1,200-page book? So, of course, we want the editor's perspective, and we want Corey's, and of course, there will be readings.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne. I know all the effort you've put into organizing this festival is enormous. Our little translation series that we do 4 times a year called Us and Them. Our next event is this coming Friday. You know, that's just 4 readers here and there. I don't even want to know the number of readers you've brought out for this, so thank you very much. As for what could compel a contemporary reader to approach this monstrous book, published today, by the way, if you like love, that's your only ticket to entry. This is a tumultuous love affair filled with imagery of the sea, and I think waves crashing and hitting the shore and retreating and tides shifting. I feel like that very much is the mood of these letters that cross 15 years from 1944 to 1959. It was a book born essentially on D-Day, June 6, 1944, when Camus and Casares meet. Casares is acting in a play of Camus called The Misunderstanding. She's 21, Camus is 30 at the time and already famous. And they begin a short love affair that ends with the end of the occupation in France, and Camus' wife, Francine, returns in October of 1944. And that seems to be the end of this affair between the two. Except that 4 years later, they meet again on June 6th, now 1948, on the Boulevard Saint-Germain, and they reignite this love affair. And for the next 12 years, and until Camus' tragic death in a car accident in 1960, they continue on this correspondence. So that's essentially the stretch of what this is. We looked at the word count. It's over almost 166,000 words that Corey and Sandra have translated here. So an enormous undertaking that was begun in 2022 when we first contracted for the translation. So
Did they write by hand?
they were handwritten. There's some telegraph. In the letters, in fact, Nancy mentioned Rene Char earlier as someone she's translated. It was Rene Char, immediately after Camus' death, he raced to the apartment, gathered Maria's letters and brought them to her so that they would not end up in the wrong hands. And Maria then...
The wife's in.
Yeah, exactly. Or anyone that didn't want them to be surfaced. Just before Maria's death in 1996, she handed it all over to Catherine Camus, his daughter, who has an introduction to the book. This was a bestseller in France. It was a massive event in 2017. It was covered here in the Paris Review, London, LA Review of Books. So this is finally the appearance of the English, thanks to Sandra and Corey. And I came on in 2022, and initially we signed this up with Sandra, and at a certain point, Sandra said, let's bring Corey into the fold. So I was wondering if you could tell us about how that all went down and what your role was in this translation.
Yeah, well, I came on in spring of 2023, so about a year after you and Sandra had originally started work on it. And I mean, you mentioned that it's 1,200 pages. It's just an overwhelming, right? I mean, it's, I'm assuming you have copies there. It's just a huge book. And Sandra lives in Minneapolis. I knew her. I'd already translated many books by that point. Not as many as Sandra, who's a very, very accomplished translator. But Sandra thought it would be useful to bring me in specifically because one of the problems she was having, I think, was going back and forth from one voice to the other. In other words, from Camus to Casare. And so she brought me in, and it's kind of funny because she brought me in specifically to do Casare. So Sandra ended up translating all of the Camus letters, and also the beginning of the Casares letters, and then I took over Casares, and so we had the woman doing the man's letters and the man doing the woman's letters. Sandra, I should say, is a specialist in Camus and has translated several of his books, so it really made sense from a literary standpoint. So yeah, my involvement was really from spring 2023 to spring or early summer 2025 when we finally submitted the manuscript.
Yeah, it was. We really wanted to get this book out in this spring, and it was sort of it was a way to get moving in a way. There wasn't any kind of anniversary or anything like that. We just felt like the spring was the way to go.
Yeah.
And so we kind of raced there at the end of this. Yeah, spring, flowering, returning to the world after lots of frozen days, especially this winter. So I thought I'd just read very quickly little pieces of these letters so you can get a sense of what kind of love this was. It was a love of equals. This is not Camus dominated Maria in some other smaller role. These are two formidable artists communicating with each other. And as you move through this book, you see that the letters on both sides are remarkable. Here's just a quick note from Camus in 1950, so 2 years into their sort of renewed affair. Equally lucid, equally sensible, capable of understanding everything, and so of overcoming everything. Strong enough to live without illusion, and bound to one another by ties of the earth, intelligence, the heart, and our bodies. Nothing can surprise us, I know it. Nothing can divide us. Later that year, Maria writes, we met, we recognized each other, we gave ourselves to each other. We succeeded in creating a burning love of pure crystal. Do you realize how happy we are and what has been given to us? This sort of intensity is completely sustained over this entire 1,200-page book. Their love is so intense. And I wondered, Corey, if I pulled a little piece of a letter about Maria's diet that I thought gave a sense of her voice. If you wanted to read that, and anything else you think that could help everyone here just sort of understand who Maria is in this relationship.
Oh, so you must be talking about the first letter, right? If I'm correct. Oh, no. Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm just
the January 1950. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Before I do, just to emphasize something Todd's already mentioned. I mean, as Todd said, this is very much a relationship of equals. We in North America, in the English-speaking world, we tend to know all about Camus and maybe have heard of Casare if we're really into art house cinema or the theater. But she was a huge star in France. And in some ways, every bit as famous as Camus. I mean, I mentioned to a French actor friend of mine that I was working on a translation of her letters, and he was sort of in awe. It gave me serious cred with him that evening. So yeah, just on to the letter that Todd mentioned. This is from January 24th, 1950. And she's talking about, Maria, by the way, Maria Casares was a very slight woman who ate and was constantly complaining about never being able to gain weight. So here's a little sample of that. I went home, had some boeuf bourguignon, brains, cheese, a banana, and some buttered bread that I dipped in a cup of milky coffee. Full, free of the day's problems, a little weary, happy because of you, seething with a vague and burning desire. Here I am, offering myself to you. Do you want me?
Is there anything more French than that? Oh my God. Corey, I wonder, this is a correspondence.
Bourguignon and brains and butter. That's a lot of food.
Yeah, Corey, I was wondering, because this stretches across so many years and, they're changing, their celebrity is changing, Camus is eventually receiving the Nobel in 1957, which is a bit covered in these letters. And I wondered what it felt like to sort of grow with Maria, if the style changed, if you felt like you needed to adjust your approach, or if it stayed consistent, surprisingly consistent. I just would love to hear a little bit about how you moved with her through the collection.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, my first response is to say she doesn't change a bit. I mean, she's just remarkably, she has a very strong personality, is very stubborn, has opinions that she cherishes, that she holds dear, and that she doesn't really change. So what changes, I would say, over the years, from the late 40s to the very end of the 1950s, is I think she becomes more secure in the relationship. They still write each other all the time, several times a day sometimes, but she has no question that the next time they're in Paris together, they're going to be together. They're going to be, living together as a couple, essentially. I mean, it's complicated, but that's how they spent a great deal of the time when they were together. But yeah, this is another thing about her. It's tempting, again, to view Camus as the intellectual and Maria Casares as his fling, and so somebody not very weighty in terms of her. She had an incredibly strong character. And it comes even at the beginning when she's very, very young already. I think this is probably part of what attracted Camus to her. It's just that she is so strong-willed and so insistent on her, on just being who she is. And she becomes a bit more well-read, right? She's reading in her spare time. She's working a lot in film, in TV, in the theater. And in her spare time, she's reading the great works of Western literature, right? It's incredible. So she changes a bit in that regard, but I would say that the voice stays remarkably constant, and it's one of the really attractive things about her.
Did you maybe want to read her letter on when she's reading The Magic Mountain?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a funny moment. They're often talking about books, and Maria has no shortage of opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to read? Do you want me to read?
Yeah.
Okay. This is from March 1958. In 1958, yeah, she's reading The Magic Mountain. I started The Magic Mountain. It's beautiful and atrocious, but I was right to want to read it. It's a book that allows me to understand and how things that have always been obscure for me. Alas, I too often forget that I'm the daughter of a rich man and a bastion of health. I forget that I've always been able to avoid illness, promiscuity, and above all, vulgarity. And I don't think enough about how, from one day to the next, thousands of people can be thrown into a world in which only those three dark sisters make the law. Oh, pride, the sole lovable refuge of a desolate universe.
She's fantastic. And thinking about their separation, Camus most of this time is out in the countryside and hoping to recover from his long-suffering tuberculosis. So he's very rarely in the city. He comes in for work with the theater, comes back out to the country. And so a lot of their separation is based there, but there's also these longer trips that they make, and the letters tend to get even more interesting when they're abroad. Camus takes a long lecture tour through South America, and then later Maria goes to North America and through Montreal and New York, and is performing in various shows at that time. And this is around 1958. And I thought one of us should maybe read this letter from Montreal, only because she's anticipating her trip to New York, and we get to hear a little bit about what Maria thought of New York in that time.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to read it. I should say, too, so she's writing from Montreal, and she's not crazy about Montreal. As somebody who used to live in Montreal, I felt a bit bad about it, but her comparison was to, she said that Montreal is exactly like Amiens. If anybody's ever been to Amiens, which is about an hour and a half north of Paris in Picardy, kind of small industrial city with not a lot going for it. That's what she says about that. But here's what she says, anticipating the trip to New York. And this is from October 1958. After a slight depression, brought on no doubt by the sudden change of rhythm, diet, breaks, and also my encounter with the new world, which made me vaguely sense, perhaps, the beginnings of the neurotic episode. Everything is back in order. These last 3 days, my appetite has come back, sleep along with it, and I've already regained a bit of the weight I'd lost. I'm leading the most American life you can imagine. Work, drugstore, steakhouse, shopping, little food products in my fridge, movies and TV. I haven't found the time to go shout in a stadium, a football or baseball game, but I certainly will in New York, and I'm expecting to arrive in time to go to the last day of the big competition. The city seduced me before I set foot here. I'm walking its street. I hear she's in New York, right? I'm walking its streets, doing the round of the drugstores, the automats, the neighborhoods, the buildings. I marched alongside the Columbus Day Parade. I've already attended a competition. I'm getting ready to visit the museums and theater. What's more, the city, the streets, and all the people fascinate me and constantly appeal to me. And the kind mood that prevails in every public space keeps me from going back to my rather grim hotel.
That could well be a description of Saturday's event that will occupy Christopher Street for the St. George Festival. Yeah, I love hearing that.
The automatic just took me back to the 50s.
What is it? What is an automat?
You know, it's a restaurant that has little doors that you put a quarter into, and the door opens up, and you take the plate out, and you close the door again, and then it's an automatic. It's automatic food. And it was great fun for a kid to go in with your quarter.
I should say, by the way, that Sandra had, my co-translator, Sandra Smith, she had the exact same reaction. She was born in the Bronx, grew up in New York City, and she said, oh, that totally takes me back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time travel, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as these letters progress, there are two deaths that kind of stand as I don't know, junctures in this relationship. And one of those we know is Camus, that comes later. The other is Maria's father, who looms very large throughout the letters. He was in exile from Franco's Spain, Santiago Casares Quiroga. He was a prime minister of the Spanish Republic in 1936. And he's sort of living now in Paris. Maria, throughout this correspondence, she's taking care of him. He too is suffering from tuberculosis. So there's a bit of a mirror there between him and Camus. And it's a long and painful illness that he just won't go. And the sort of letters are like, it's going to be tomorrow, it's going to be the next day. And then it finally comes. And I was wondering, Corey, if there was anything around the time of her father's death that you thought worth sharing, or we can continue to move forward or not. But
Yeah, so her father, I'll read from a letter that she sent to Camus on February 18th, 1950, very shortly after her father's death. And so I'll just read a couple of paragraphs. It's a long letter, and she's describing how exhausted she is because of so many people are coming through the house, right? So this is another, there are so many interesting threads here that we could pull out, but right, they're a very prominent Spanish family living in Paris, right? She only took on French nationality, I think, in the 70s. And so they're a very prominent Spanish Republican family living in Paris, and there are many Spanish Republicans in exile in Paris. So you can imagine when the former prime minister of the Spanish Republic dies, people are. So the guy dies, her father dies, and it's just suddenly her apartment is flooded with people. And so when she finally does have some time to reflect, she writes Camus, and here's part of what she writes. I've always had endless admiration for my father, even though in the family it was rare to praise each other. Now he is worshipped, and that isn't born of myth, but what is most real, warm, and alive in this world. To have known him, loved him, seen him live and die, that is a beautiful treasure to jealously hold on to. To have been his daughter is and will be something I'll be most proud of, and means that I must always live a life that is worthy of him. Today, I don't yet want to stop and ask myself how I live out my life. I feel helpless just thinking about it. Thankfully, my world is not empty. You are here. But you know, mon chéri, even though he had nothing to do with my love for you, without realizing it, he helps me to love you. I'll stop there, but I'd like to compliment, I guess, for both Camus and her father.
Yeah. Just kind of zooming forward here, because I don't know how much time we have left. We
We're
go.
limited by the Zoom.
Exactly. I just wanted to get a little closer to January 1960 is when Camus dies in a tragic car accident with his publisher, Michel Gallimard, publisher of our friend Sylvie here. Just want to pause to say how miraculous those poems were. It's not every reading where everyone claps after every single poem, and I think they were really just special translations. Very, very glad to share this evening with you both. But as Camus is coming to the end of his life, we get his last letter on December 30th, 1959. It says, "Good, the last letter. Just to tell you that I'll be arriving on Tuesday, driving up with the Gallimards on Monday. They're coming here on Friday. I'll call you when I get there, but perhaps we could agree to meet for dinner on Tuesday. Let's say we'll do that in theory, unless there are problems on the road, and I'll call you to confirm dinner. And he ends it, I hold you close, hold you tightly to me until Tuesday, when I will begin again. I mean, it's just so loaded. And I wanted to read from one other letter from Camus around that period. This is about 15 days earlier, December 14th, just to show kind of where the love has arrived and how it's grown. He says, society, which I've run away from, is weighing down on me through the mail. But for certain people, it's better to read them than have them close by. So I remain in peace. Don't forget, though, that I love to feel you close by and read your letters, if you truly have free time. But don't worry if you can't write. I am with you every step of the way until the tomb and beyond, unless I die before you. Whatever happens, a single heart will have beaten within us that will still be heard, even after we're gone, joining the mystery of the world. You get this sense that he kind of knows he's on the way out. Maybe we're just applying that retroactively. But so yeah, Camus dies in 1960, and Maria lives much, much longer. She's around until 1996, at which point these letters are handed off to Catherine Camus. And fun fact that Sandra taught me is that if anyone here has read the book Mona's Eyes by Thomas Schlesser, he's the grandson of Andre Schlesser and Maria Casare. She marries him in 1978 and until his death in 1985. So the Casare spirit lives on through Thomas Schlesser. I don't know. We have some other excerpts and things, but if we could maybe take a pause here and
Do they ever talk politics? Is that political? Do they ever comment on everyday things? I mean, not every day is what she eats, but world events, or is that completely absent? Because they're both very political in a way.
surprisingly not as much as you'd think. They really don't address the war all that much. I think at one point Maria has prepared like a sort of political essay that Camus comments on, sort of revises for her.
That's really fascinating. I mean, it really was all about.
I mean, having read carefully through these, there's nothing that's standing out to me as
Yeah, I would second that. It's really passing references. It's almost all about, it's either about their love or the places that they're visiting, because obviously when they're writing letters, they're not in the same place most of the time, and she's constantly touring, and he's so famous that he's also constantly traveling. And then just about details of this or that play, this or that book. Yeah, politics it's exactly as Todd says, surprisingly absent, given that both of them probably had very strong political opinions, or certainly had very strong political opinions.
What a luxury, huh?
Yeah.
Is Camus still married for all this?
He's still married through all this.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the ghost in the room that it comes up every now and then, she'll say, that thing we can't talk about. And, he's raising the children with his wife, and they're often separate too. She's not always out in the country with him. And, the day he dies, she goes back on the train the day before. So they're out there together and still together. And she knows about what's going on. They're remarkably cryptic about it throughout the letters.
I had a question that you mentioned that Charles was the one who went and cleaned out the apartment after Camus died. There's a volume that Gallimard put out of letters between Camus and Charles. And I own that. Has anyone translated that, and what relationship do you think that might have to this new volume that just came out today?
I actually don't know if that's translated. Do you, Corey?
No, that's the next one I'm going to do for you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
No,
Forthcoming from God.
you can't do it. I'm thinking about it.
I'm just looking online here, and I don't see any edition original. I don't see any translation, which is strange, right? I mean,
Yeah. early in the correspondence, he goes out into the country, and Renee is his neighbor where he's at. So I think, he probably knows very early on about what's happening between them. And I'm sure felt that urgency to save the correspondence.
But Shao has his own.
There must be some overlap between the letters, and I would be very surprised if it isn't discussed, at least cryptically.
Hmm.
Do you want to read maybe one last letter? Or in the probably 5 minutes we have?
Sure.
So we'll allow it. Or whatever you have in mind.
What do you think, Corey? Which one? We have a bunch of extras here on the side.
Or does anybody have another question?
This is a question, yeah. I was wondering if they ever talk about the judgment I'm assuming Maria would face being in an affair for so many years with a married man and being from a wealthy family, especially at that time.
Do you recall that, Corey?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question very well.
She asked if they discuss at all the ways in which Maria could suffer from the judgment of her peers and of the parents at large as someone engaged in this long affair.
Yeah, not at all.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
Yeah, I just think it's funny because, okay, I'm trying to remember. In my recollection, it doesn't come up a single time, which shows you just how accepted it is. Of course, Camus was having an extramarital affair with this beautiful young Spanish woman. And of course, she's right. I mean, you never hear of anyone.
She's so busy and like so much in the zone of her own life. I mean, she's on the radio and theater, on film, traveling. She's just kind of doing her thing all the time. And in fact, there are several instances where other men sort of make a pass at her, and she'll mention, "Oh, he was over for lunch, he was over for dinner again."
Yeah.
And then Camus will get mad, and then he'll mention he met a woman. They're always kind of like dangling these other prospects in front of each other. And in fact, I think Camus does have another relationship or two at some point. I'm not sure. He certainly doesn't mention it explicitly.
Yeah, it's always surprising to me, or it was always surprising while translating, just to see how jealous he would get when she would just mention someone in passing and talk about how she formed a positive opinion of someone. And he would say, "Well, how could you say that? I know the guy. He's an idiot."
Well, I think we're all going to have to buy this in 1200.
It's a remarkable book. It's worth every one of the $60 it's going to cost you to buy it. I promise you. It's a collector's item.
Well,
And thanks to Corey and Sandra for the enormous 3 years of work it took to do this.
Oh, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. And just the book. I'd say the book is just such an amazing window into mid-century France, which is already such an interesting place and time, right? And just the art of correspondence. I mean, I could sort of go on forever about it. But they would write 3 and 4 letters a day, and they were all good. I mean, it's insane, Wonderful, just a wonderful window onto that place and time.
well, thank you so much for editing. That must have been quite a challenge.
Thankfully, no structural editing. Just making it as smooth as I possibly could, and questioning anything that seemed off and nudging.
But I'm really glad we had this perspective, and I thank you. We wanted to have Corey here, but it just didn't happen. But next year, maybe. We'll still be, yeah. Thank you all for staying, and Todd, Todd and Corey was just delightful. And tomorrow there will be two events, one at both at the Espacio de Cultura CDMYU, which is 53 Washington Square South. The first one is part on architecture. It's co-organized by the American Institute of Architects of New York and the Col·legi d'Arquitectes de Catalunya, and it's about cutting edge architecture in Catalonia, in Barcelona particularly, and things that are happening between Barcelona and New York. Because this year Barcelona has been designated the UNESCO World Capital of Architecture. So that's why we wanted to devote part of the festival to that. And in the evening, Joan Noel, who is a Puerto Rican poet, he calls him, I love this, on his blog, he calls himself a stateless poet. He and Lucas Manuel Schreiber, and I'm forgetting the name of the other poet, Sheila. Anyway, they're going to be doing a film, music, and poetry extravaganza, and it's also at the Espacio de Culturas, which used to be called the King Juan Carlos Center, and then he's been canceled. So it's that will be from 6 to 8. So thank you again. Thank you all for being here. And on Thursday we'll be back in the Daffodil Room. I love that. The Oyster Room and the Daffodil Room. Thank you.
Thank you.